was that I got a chance to bottle feed Ella, probably one of the youngest members of our church. It was like this little Zen moment in the middle of this crazy week, and I just fed her, and it was amazing. And while I was feeding her, her dad Cam was there, and we were chatting just about like sort of the toughness of life. We've both hit that stage where we're like we're proper medium adults, you know. You're just saying like, wow, this thing really catches up with you, and we're talking about it, the difficulty of like when life squeezes you, stuff comes out. And even in the last 2 or 3 months, like I've had a lot of squeezing and some not very nice stuff has come out of me. And I said, it's funny, you don't just get to say like, oh, wow, life was hard. Like, oh, that's just like out of the blue. No, actually, that is me. If there's an orange and you squeeze it and orange juice comes out, it's because that was there. Not just because it suddenly got magically when you squished it. That's there. And so I was thinking like, even though I'm like, all of this stuff is coming out of me. Like, Lord, what's going on? And then as I was talking to Cam, I've heard him say like, well, that's what I'm doing with the Israelites in Exodus. I'm giving them a little bit of a squeezing because I want to see like what's actually going on there. And so this morning, I want to spend a little bit of time looking at the second half of Exodus, which is this idea of the Israelites. They gather at this mountain called Sinai. And that is the same mountain that God meets Moses that earlier when he says, go back to the Egyptians and tell Pharaoh to let my people go. And Moses starts having this debate with him like, not me, God, I don't think I'm the right person. And he says, so that you'll know that it's me that sent you, you will come back here with all of Israel and you will worship before this very mountain. And so often we think of the story of Exodus and we bottle it into this like when God's favorite people get to the promised land. But that's not actually the story. In fact, they get to Mount Sinai in chapter 19 and they don't move from there. They're there for the whole of the rest of Exodus. It's another like 20 chapters or so. They're there for the whole of the book of Leviticus, and then they're there for 10 chapters of Numbers. And if I were to say to you, if you called me and I'd been at the Kruger Park since the start of the year camping there, and you called me, I'd be like, you won't believe it, I live in the Kruger Park now. Why? Because like actually they're there for over a year, I think it is in the time frame. And actually God is not rushing them out of this wilderness in Sinai. It's about 59 chapters all in all. And the book of Exodus doesn't necessarily finish in this idea of promise. It actually finishes in the presence of God. And it's very interesting because the whole book starts with almost this like questioning of the heart of Pharaoh and the Egyptians. And it actually ends with a lot of questions around the heart of the Israelites. You know, it's human nature. The best form of like victory would be like payback. Like if I was an Israelite, I think it would have been pretty sick if God had kept us in Egypt. We became the Manos. And Egypt started serving us, and then we opened the original Club Med on the Nile, and we just bought some Lilos, and we had all of these oats grafting for us, and he just reversed the scales, and it would have been like, great plan, God. Seems pretty fair. They did it to us for 400 years. Let's just do it to them for 400 years. But God has a much bigger plan, and his plan is this. He says to Moses, he says, go tell Pharaoh to let my people go. So what? So that they may worship me. And so chapter 9, what happens is the Israelites have sort of seen God acting. There's the 12 plagues against Pharaoh. He brings them through the Red Sea. He brings water from a rock. He turns water that's bitter sweet. He gives them manna every morning. They've seen the sort of hand of God, and they've seen God moving. They've seen the cloud. They've seen all of this, but they're yet to really gather as a community before him. And so they gather. They gather in chapter 19 at Sinai, and it starts like this in verse 1. Exactly 2 months after the Israelites left Egypt, they arrived in the wilderness of Sinai. After breaking camp at Rephidim, they came to the wilderness of Sinai and set up a camp there at the base of Mount Sinai. Then Moses climbed the mountain to appear before God. The Lord called him from the mountain and said, give these instructions to the family of Jacob. Announce it to the descendants of Israel. You know I carried you on eagle's wings. So beautiful, eh? You know I carried you on eagle's wings. And here is, and I brought you to myself. Not brought you to Sinai, not brought you to the wilderness, not brought you to the promise, not brought you to your favorite job, not gave you your dream wife, although he might have. Not all of the things. No, I brought you to myself. Now you can obey me and keep my covenant, and you will be my own special treasure from among all the people of the earth. for all the earth belongs to me, and you will be what? My kingdom of priests, my holy nation. It's quite amazing. So what is God looking for? He's actually looking for a priesthood. And the New Testament talks about this idea of the priesthood of all believers, which is every single one of us who have what? Been called to God. He then goes on in verse 9 and it says, the Lord said to Moses, I will come to you in a thick cloud, Moses, so that the people themselves can hear me when I speak to you. They will always trust you. And so God is actually almost like he's gathering all of Israel and he's saying, it's not enough this idea of just like Moses coming up to the top of the mountain. And if you take that idea, that's exactly what the tabernacle is. It's like they meet at Sinai, they put a boundary around it. When he goes up the mountain, a few people go with him and then Moses goes the whole way. And that's exactly what the tabernacle is. It's like there's this outer court and then the priests go inside and then only one priest, he goes in. And so it's like the mountain is now put on earth. We'll get to that. But that's aside. But it's like he gathers them and he's like, I want to begin to work in you guys. And so in this process of being made into this priesthood, quite a few interesting things happen. And what actually happens is there's about 8 trips that Moses does up the mountain. And so it's a bit of a tricky book to read because what keeps on happening, there's these events that are like broken up within chapters of instructions of the stuff that God is telling Moses to sort of tell to the Israelites. And so if you just open it and you read, you're like, what's going on here? Like, where are we? Are we up the mountain? But it's both. It's like God speaking to Moses up the mountain and the Israelites are at the bottom of the mountain. And so Moses gets the 10 commandments. And they're given a whole lot of other laws. It's like civil and moral laws about how to live their lives. You'd think the Lord is concerned about interior decorating and wardrobe design if you just open it in a random place, because he gives them these like very specific things of like, this is how you are to dress the priests. This is how you are to build the tabernacle. I want it made like this. And then the other thing that they're given is all the plans. Like this is like the detail. This is how big it must be. This is all of these things. And so underneath the complexity of all of this, there's 2 main things, which is this idea of God makes a covenant with them. He basically says, of all the people in the earth, I want you to be my people. Secondly, what he says is, he's like, it's not just that. I don't just want you to be my people. He says, I want to tabernacle with you. So the building of the tabernacle is actually this thing of like, in that time, it's like, I want to literally make a house amongst you. I want this place that I can dwell amongst you. And so Sinai isn't primarily just this thing. If you open it and you're just like, jeepers, this is quite a lot of rules. It actually makes sense if you understand the grandness of it. It's like, it's a holy God saying, hey, this is how I'm going to live amongst the unholy people. I don't know who here has ever done communal living. Raise your hands. If you've ever done communal living. I excelled at communal living. I lived in a digs for like 10 years. Sometimes it was like 15 people. When we were a little bit older and we had some decency, it was like 8 people. But it was this packed house. And anybody who's ever lived communally will know that one person can make a massive difference to a house. It's like if you get one salty brother in there, it's over, eh? It's just like, bro, you're so exhausting. Like, just stop it. I remember we eventually sat this one guy down and we're like, bro, we're your friends, so we're just going to tell you straight, you're not made to live with humans. You need to go and get a bachelor pad. And you need to do a lot of self-reflection before you get married. Like, you really need to work on this. You're not made to live with people. It's likewise, what happens if I called you up and I said, hey, the president is going to come and stay with you? You'd make a load of changes to your life. If I said, hey, a fugitive's coming, you'd suddenly get all like secret and your kids would think you're part of like the FBI or something. You're like, we've got to hide this guy. If I send you a criminal, you start packing away your stuff. Why? Because whoever's coming to live with you is going to radically change how you live. And so how much more when it's like the creator of the universe is saying, hey, I want to come abide with you. And so you'll notice the order. It's not like all of these rules, and then if you do that, I'll come. It's actually, he rescues them. He brings them to himself. He makes them his people. He comes to dwell amongst them, and then he says, I'm going to teach you how to live. You see, often when I'm in a bad headspace, I treat like the obedience, my obedience towards God is the price I've got to pay for his presence. It's like I've actually, at that stage, I've fallen out of worship in my life with God, because actually, when I think about it, I'm like, oh, this is so worth it. Why? Because I've come back into worship with him. And that's really what it is. Worship is actually our response to who God is. And so this is often where we can sometimes misapply grace. And I didn't word this so well in the first one, so this is my redemption shot. But it's like the love of God is completely unconditional. But actually, like, his presence and his promise has very clear conditions. What I mean is his love is completely unconditional. You don't have to do a thing for his love. You don't have to work for his love. You just immediately, like, boom, you're in the family of God. But his grace is not aimless. It's like he takes you and he's like, now I'm gonna put you with purpose into something. And it's not that we change for his love. In fact, it's the opposite. It's like the love of God radically changes us. And so actually all of this is old covenant is screaming and shouting towards the new covenant. And so we've used this word in this series a lot, formation. And I almost want to say, like, yes, what we're talking about in formation here in the Old Testament, in the New Testament, that actually becomes transformation. It's quite incredible because here God is like working externally on the Israelites because of the limitations. But the new covenant is not, I'm going to come down from heaven. I'm going to live with you. And the new covenant is empowering because the Spirit of God actually lives within me and begins to change me. I said it earlier, but like, I'm a very different person to who I was 10 years ago. I'm the exact same type of bloke, but I'm incredibly different, and it's got very little to do with me. It's because like God has come in and he's had to move some things. And so if you open up and you might read something random in there, like this is just from chapter 25, verse 17. It says, then make the ark's cover. This is all about the tabernacle where God's going to dwell. The place of atonement from pure gold. It must be 45 inches long and 27 inches wide. Then make 2 cherubim hammered from gold and place them on 2 ends of the atonement cover. Mold the cherubim on each end of the atonement cover, making it out of 1 piece of gold. You think, yo, Lord, you've been like really specific to a bunch of desert nomads from 3,000 years ago. It's very complex. Like, yes. Or actually, you're so concerned about even the small things. Well, if I, in the New Testament, in the New Covenant, if I'm your tabernacle, you're concerned actually about the most small parts of my life. Because actually, you want to dwell in my life. And you think, wow, if there's so much care and detail there, how much more for me? C.S. Lewis has that beautiful quote. He says, imagine yourself as a living house. God comes in to rebuild that house. At first, perhaps you can understand what he's doing. He's getting into the drains, fixing the leaks. You're not surprised. But then he starts knocking the house about in a way that hurts abominably. What on earth is he up to? You thought you were being made into a decent little cottage, but he's building a palace. He intends to come and live in it himself. It's quite a profound thing, eh? He intends to come and live in it himself. And so this question begins to unfold of how does a holy God live amongst the unholy people? And it's so complex for them, but it's so incredibly gracious and easy for us because Jesus, the life of Jesus just fulfills everything. It fulfills the law. It fulfills the whole sacrifice thing. He is the ultimate high priest. It's just like Jesus just comes and he's like, I'm just going to sort this all out with my life and my sacrifice. Where are we at in these notes here? This idea of formation. And so you'll notice in this story, there's a bit of a pattern here. It's a bit of like it's a trust tug of war. I don't know if you've ever read the Amplified Bible, but whenever it talks about faith, it puts in the brackets like trust, because actually the better word that we have for faith in English would probably actually be trust. And so God actually begins this almost like tug of war with the Israelites, and it's like they'll complain. He does something amazing. It's like, oh wow, you're so good, and then they fall back into like disobedience or whatever it is. And it's just like it's repeating and it's repeating. And I don't think there's a much better story of this in this whole end than the story of the golden calf. It happens in chapter 32. And I want to look at it as a bit of like a breaking down of this whole thing and like, how do we see what God is doing in all of this? Maybe we can actually, it'll be easier for me to read it from there. It's very interesting. What happens is like, this is actually directly following up from chapter 24, and then there's a big jump, and now we jump back into it in 32. It's the same event. The chapters in between is God talking to Moses. And so it's very interesting because at the start of this, the Israelites have just said like, yes, we agree to this covenant. We agree to this idea of God wanting us to be these people, and he tells them, these are some of the things I expect for you. And they're like, sharp, good, we're on. This is the best news we've ever heard. And then this happens. Moses gets called back up the mountain, and it says, when the people saw how long it was taking Moses to come back down the mountain, they gathered around Aaron. First thing, just a little bit of impatience. It's taking a bit long, Lord. I kind of wanted this to happen in a couple days. Come on, they said, make up some gods who can lead us. We don't know what happened to this fellow Moses who brought us here from the land of Egypt. That's one time's fast demotion, eh? Moses has gone from like leader of the whole nation. Obviously it's God, but like splitting the Red Sea. Now he's just a fellow. Oh, we don't know what's happened to this fellow. It's like there's this convenient forgetfulness that the Israelites are just slipping into. Just to be clear, they're at the bottom of the mountain talking to Aaron. They can see the cloud. They can see the fire on top of them. Moses is in there. Moses is not taking a long time. The Lord is. And they have this impatient forgetfulness that is just so convenient to slip into. And they say, the people, come on, Aaron, do something for us. So Aaron said, take the gold rings from the ears of your wives and sons and daughters and bring them to me. All the people took the gold rings from their ears and brought them to Aaron. Very interesting. Where do you get gold when you're living in the desert and you've been slaves for 400 years? Chapter 11, I will cause the Egyptians to look favorably upon you, that when you exit, they will give you gifts. They take the very gifts, the favorableness of God, and they say to Aaron, he says, come bring it, I'll make something out of this. Then Aaron took the gold, melted it down, and molded it into the shape of a calf. When the people saw it, they exclaimed, O Israel, these are the gods who brought you out of the land of Egypt. Aaron saw how excited the people were. Hey, that's dangerous, eh? Who's done stuff out of the excitement of people? Rookie, big rookie. So he built an altar in front of the calf. Then he announced, tomorrow will be a festival for the Lord. Something very interesting is happening here. Aaron is not trying to replace God. He's just trying to control God. He's just trying, if I can make this a little bit more easy for us to navigate, this will be better. It's very interesting. It says, so the people got up the next morning. They sacrificed burnt offerings and peace. And after this, they celebrated with feasting and drinking, and they indulged in pagan revelry. You see, it's very interesting because Aaron actually says, we're going to set this aside in a way to honor God. It's his idea of what worship should look like, and it lands in pagan revelry. The Lord told Moses, quick, go down to the mountain. Your people whom you brought from the land of Egypt have corrupted themselves. How quickly they have turned away from the way I commanded them to live. Very interesting what's happening here, because at this point, the model that God has given Moses is he comes to Moses. He says, Moses, I need you to be a mouthpiece to my people and other people. He says, I can't do it. He says, okay, I'll give you Aaron. And Aaron will be a mouthpiece to the people. So it goes God, Moses, Aaron, the people. What happens here is it goes the people, Aaron, idolatry. You see, anything where we're listening to the opinions of people instead of the opinions of God, you go that way, you're going to land up in idolatry. And I realize when I look back in my life, so often I wanted to worship God. It's like, God, this is just a little bit more me, so I'm going to do it this way. This is a little bit more like I understand this. I can see this. It's very interesting. Marv and I were actually talking about this idea of architecture. And he was talking about how your primary sense is your eyes. And actually, it's quite incredible because they actually, you know what's difficult about God sometimes? You can't see him. So they say, come, give us something we can see. Let's just make a little golden calf and worship that. You see, I realized so often I lost my awe, my fear of God in my mid-20s. And I just thought I'll just do it my way. And I was tricking myself that I'm living a God-centered life when it's actually just me at the center with God in it. And it's very interesting because I realized I sort of came to this massive repentance and God almost unlocked Romans 1 to me. And it talks about all about forgetting the living creator. I realized I just forgotten the living creator. I'd lost my awe for who God was. And it says this, and they began to think up foolish ideas of what God was like. I had so many foolish ideas of what God was like. I'd let my circumstances, my beliefs, my preferences decide who God was. As a result, their minds became dark and confused. Incredibly dark and confused mind. Claiming to be wise, they instead became utter fools. It's crazy. Proverbs 1 verse 7. Fear of the Lord is the foundation of knowledge. So there's an implication there. Where there's no fear of God, the suggestion is there's a lack of knowledge. We live in a society that has very little fear of God. The implication of that is I don't think there's much true knowledge, true wisdom, stuff that you can build your life on. And yet we're listening to everything. Oh, let me build on that. And God actually, Jesus talks about that. He says, build on the rock. John 14 verse 6 says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. We've been talking about this a little bit in our home group. It's so easy to recognize God as the truth and the life. We're like, I love that. That's great. But when it says like, but the way, we suddenly get a bit like, but I thought I was going to do my way. Like, I'll take the truth and the life, but don't give me the way because now you're blocking me. I want to do it my way. It's very interesting because Jesus' invitation to the disciples is come follow me. He gives them very little wiggle room of what the way is. He says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And we know in John 1, it says, the word became flesh and dwelt amongst us. You see, God wants to come and dwell amongst us. It's the word made flesh. He wants to come and live in our lives. Why? Because he wants to show us. It's quite amazing. It's like the Holy Spirit is almost like this internal, like Jesus GPS. John 14, he says, like, it's better that I go so that I send you the comforter. It's like another who is just like me. Why? So that actually you can follow the way. I'm closing. I don't know if you remember the story of Floyd. We house at Cam and Marie's house, and it came with a bird. And Floyd is this very lucky little bird. He is a cannibal, unfortunately, because he ate a piece of chicken while I was looking after him. But other than that, he's great. He's got a wonderful little nature. And he loves being out his cage. And we literally were house sitting that house the first week we started the Exodus series. And I felt God, like, it was so weird. I was like living in this house. It's a little picture of Exodus. It's like Floyd was in his cage and he loves to come out his cage. But as soon as you make a fast movement or do anything that's like he doesn't like, he's boom, back in the cage. And it's like God is trying to get the Israelites out of slavery. And yet whenever there's something that doesn't happen, you hear them and say, but we ate meat in Egypt. It's like, this, they want their slavery again. And I thought, this is quite interesting watching this little bird. Then I had a double down of it. And this week I was reminded, I've almost felt like God saying, this is what's starting to happen in the second half of Exodus. I took Floyd around. I didn't know what to do with him. So I put him in the car and I let him out the cage. Somebody told me after the first service, Luke, that's very dangerous. I was like, guys, it's a bird, not like a, you know what I mean? Anyway, so I had the windows up. Floyd was in the car with me and he loved it. I've never seen Floyd so happy. He was just cruising. He was just like loving the songs. He was everything. He just loved. And I realized, you know what's happened now? It's like, I'm just in a bigger cage. And now I've been invited into the cage. And he's like, this is even better. This is better than before because like now I've got you in my cage. And now I feel even extra safe. But the thing is, Floyd still doesn't know how to fly. Floyd still doesn't actually know how to be a wild bird in the open. And why? So stage one is like this tug of war of it's uncomfortable with God. It's like, I want to go back to my cage. Stage two is this thing of like, I got a better idea. Lord, come join me in the cage. Because then I'll get my little bit of comfort. I'll get my friendship out of you. But I'm still in this cage. And I realize so often the way I'm bartering and the way I'm working with God, I'm actually just saying to him, like, Lord, come be in my cage because I think that will be peaceful. And so what happens? What actually happens here with this story? I think it's something beautiful to see is I think Moses finally gets it. It's very beautiful because Moses starts Exodus with this story of who are you, God? And all of these things happen. It's a bit carnage. It's just like, and actually after this is like, God is really fed up. And he actually comes and he says to Moses, like, I'm going to that's it. I'm done with the Israelites. And God says, and Moses says, remember your covenant. Remember your covenant, God. What will it look like for you if you destroy these people? And he says a very interesting thing to says Moses. He says, I'll destroy them, but I'll make a great name out of you. And he says, no, God, actually remember your covenant. Remember what this means. And it's very interesting because theologically, it's not like we would say it in English. It's actually much deeper than, but it says like God changed his mind. It's like, obviously God doesn't change his mind, but it's like Moses gets into this grapple with him and it lands in this very beautiful thing. It's probably my favorite part of the whole of Exodus in chapter 33. And he says, God comes to Moses and says, okay, fine, we'll do this. Get back on the horse, for lack of a better term, and lead the people into the promised land. But I'm not coming with you. I'm not going to tabernacle with you. You do. And he says, God, unless you come with us, don't send us from here. I remember moments in my faith where I was just so frustrated with God. I was just I'm so over this thing. And I remember just saying, God, I just can't move from this place unless you come with me. And it was so filled with pride and yet also this genuineness of what's the point if you don't come with me? And so it's very interesting because we can spend our whole faith journeys, our whole trust relational thing with God somewhere in the zone of God, if you get me through this season, if you give me this relationship, if you give me this job, if you fix this thing, if you just get me to the other side of whatever the storm is, then I can do this worship thing. And it's funny because sometimes in His kindness, God actually comes and He helps you with those things. And yet the danger of it is you can live in all the gifts, but you miss the giver. And before you know it, those things very quickly move from a gift to an idol. You see, because as Bobby so wonderfully taught us and Siseka last week, is Exodus doesn't end in the promised land. It ends in His presence, and it ends in God dwelling with His people in the tabernacle. And His dwelling with His people in the tabernacle is just a giant arrow to Jesus. It's a giant arrow to the New Testament of this God who's going to come down from heaven, God incarnate, God in flesh, God as man, Jesus, the life of Jesus, and His death and His resurrection. And He's I'm going to come and dwell with you, and I'm going to purchase this for the whole of mankind, and I'm going to get you out of that thing, and I'm going to put you in my presence. And then He one betters it even, which is hard for our human brains to understand, like the disciples saying, how can it be better that you go? And He says, it's better that I go because I'm going to leave you the Holy Spirit, the empowering presence of God within us. And so today, whatever this is, scrunched in the jar, the beautiful challenge for us is this idea of if your presence doesn't go with us, God, don't take me from this place unless it's with your presence. Amen.
For joining the Rock Church broadcast service. We have reached the end of our service today. To find out more about who we are, visit our website at www.therock.org.za or contact our office on office@therock.org.za. Please join us again next week, the same time on the same platform. Joining the Rock Church broadcast service. We have reached the end of our service today. To find out more about who we are, visit our website at www.therock.org.za or contact our office on office@therock.org.za. Please join us again next week, the same time on the same platform. Joining the Rock Church broadcast service. We have reached the end of our service today. To find out more about who we are, visit our website at www.therock.org.za or contact our office on office@therock.org.za. Please join us again next week, the same time on the same platform.